want to know which planet was causing your suffering? How about Earth?
Hey everyone, Rant here, back with a new Shadowverse 2 video. Today's video is going to be not really a balance wine video because, to be fair, Carbuncle Roach Force has been pretty strong for the last two sets, so it's like fine that it's dropping down. But it's more of just like a, oh my gosh, I thought this class was supposed to be evergreen, broken beyond belief all the time, and I think I might have believed the bug trauma a little too much because this deck does not feel great to play anymore. And I don't even think I could recommend people to learn it on a good conscience. Now, this is to say, obviously, if you go on YouTube, you go on Twitch, you'll find there are really good Roach players that are still succeeding, but you'll notice that they're not succeeding nearly as much as they once were. And that's because of the meta. First, I'm going to go through the wins, and first I'll go through why I think Roach is way worse than is advertised in many places. I think if you frequent communities, you'll notice that people are complaining about Roach way less. Like in set 1, set 2, Roach was like this boogie monster that would constantly be there, ruining people's days. But as this has gone on, I've seen way less people complaining, but I've still seen people say oh, Roach is still tier 0, Roach is still one of the best decks in the game. And to be fair, might be true in tournament play, but I have a feeling that even in tournament play, Roach will be snuffed out because the currently meta decks, besides Rune for the most part, can still beat it just fine. I know my meta prediction videos and my meta reading videos, I've said that Cresthaven is losing to Roach, but after playing that matchup myself a few more times, I think I was just huffing the Roach propaganda copium, and I'm pretty sure Roach is actually at best even, if not losing, because of how that matchup interacts. So we'll go over that as I get to the video, but I just want to show my reasoning for why Roach is bad. So if you go to the class rating, Grandmaster is now something that exists in the game, so we have stuff like Beyond and Ultimate, and then I think Epic at the very bottom. So obviously, as you can tell by these rankings, Beyond is the top ranking in Grandmaster. So to get Beyond, it's essentially the same thing as Diamond Master. You need to have a really good win rate, you need to have you have to be playing that class, you have to be invested in that class. These are people that are spamming the classes the most often. So these are how many people are in the top 100 or something, as far as I'm aware, in all of Shadowverse. So we can see here, Roach has 5 people in Beyond, and that's you might think, okay, that's all right, but then remember that there are 7 classes and there's at least 100 slots available for all of these 7 classes. So Roach, or we don't even know these are Roach. I think it's been proven or confirmed that some of these players are playing Izudia OTK, so we don't even know if these are all Roach players to begin with. We just know that they're Forest players. So there's only 5 Forest players, and when Roach was at its peak nonsense levels, when it was back in set 1 and set 2, you had a lot of Roach players near the top, or a lot of Forest players near the top. And obviously, since Forest was only Roach back then, we knew it was Roach. But now we only have maybe 5 people that are at the top levels of ladder with Roach. We click into Sword, and we can see that maybe the overall numbers are the same. We can see that Roach is around 1850 to 1864, but Sword not only has a higher peak, but if we keep scrolling down, we'll see that Sword has literally nearly 7 times the number of people than Roach. And I guess I may be just calling random people out, fighting my imaginary demons, but there are a lot of people that are pretending that Loot Sword is not insanely good. So if we have people pretending that Loot Sword is not tier 0, but then turning around saying Force is tier 0, I mean, we can just see in the discrepancy, the amount of people alone performing with Sword. I'm assuming these are all Loot Sword. If there's even one Mid Sword in here, then that proves that even Mid Sword is fine, right? It's just maybe Force really is not that good, because remember, Loot Sword is a deck that released just this expansion. The deck is pretty difficult. I've seen people trying to learn the deck, optimize the deck, and there are a lot of decisions to be made playing Loot Sword. But Carbuncle Roach, assuming these are Carbuncle Roach players, this deck was known to be the hardest deck in set 1. It's been improved, optimized, repeated, spammed since set 1, and we still see basically not that many Roach players potentially in the top 100 class ratings. We go over to Rune, another deck that has had the privilege of staying, top tier decks since set 1, basically the exact same list from set 2. We can see here, again, Rune is a class that people complain to be really, really strong, and there's 24 of these people in here. So if Roach was supposedly maintaining its top slot as a class like Rune was, we can see that 24 people here are still at least 24 people are still doing just fine as Rune. So why is that not reflected in Roach if Roach is also really strong? And it's to the point where even Dragon, like, it's only one more person, it's 6 people, but Dragon is a class that's considered to be objectively weak by most players. And I do agree with that statement, but there are an equal amount of Dragon players, like Roach barely outranks them in raw points, but there's an equal amount of Dragon players considered a bad craft to the current number of Roach players who, or Forest players rather, who supposedly have access to a top tier class named Roach, which is supposed to be more than well practiced by the players of this caliber at this point. And then Abyss as well. Abyss, which mostly is played around like, Mode Abyss, considered also to be a middling class, has 11 people in top rankings, and even has people that are higher ranked than those in Sword and Rune. So maybe this is a more of a point of saying that Mode Abyss is actually way better than people have it pinned as right now, because the top player is climbing way higher. Genuine question as to whether or not this Abyss player is a aggro Abyss player, or what they're playing, because they have so many points. But my point is still there. Like, we have players that have grinded to like, we have nearly double the players, more than double the players in Abyss over Roach. And I guess there is the point to be made where class ratings here, you do actually need to have good win rate. You do need to have above average win rate to climb this high, because you do actually lose points for losing. So just because, usually the previous argument was that, oh, these points just mean how many times you've played, right? So like ranked matches, for example, we see this Alice at TikTok person with 100,000 points. This is not true for class rating. Class rating actually goes up and down depending on how well you're performing. So that's why we have distinctions between Beyond and Ultimate, because you can see here, the bottom end of Beyond seems to be about like 1850. So the moment you go below 1850, they all drop down to Ultimate. So it matters. Like, your win rate actually matters. So the fact that there are so many people performing with Abyss, again, we a lot of community opinions that I've seen so far is that Dragon and Abyss are weak, and that, like, quote unquote, objectively, subjectively, whatever you want to use, like, they're weaker than Roach because Roach is the boogeyman. There are way more people performing on Abyss. So why is Abyss not better? I mean, it's because of people like downplaying it, and me too. I'm also at the I'm also responsible for doing that. But it's just like, when you look at the closest thing that we have to a stats site, which is, class ratings, it's like, oh, maybe Roach is actually as good as Dragon is, which is crazy considering that, again, Roach is supposed to be the high skill deck in the game, and you would expect the high skill deck would have some reward for it. But if you're an excellent Roach player, like Teddy, for example, this is the name you recognize from playing Roach from set 1 and 2. This is the person that was number 1 in ladder for the longest time in set 1. Like, these are really good Roach players. And Dragon, like, not to blame Dragon, because of course you need to be good at Dragon to perform to this level, but Dragon's not nearly as hard as Carbuncle Roach, right? And again, we don't even know if these are all Roach players. They might be Izuya OTK players. And then we go into Haven, the true boogeyman of this set, the one that everyone said was going to be terrible going into it. We have 15 of these Haven players in the top of ladder, which is impressive because, well, I guess the question of how long Crest Haven matches take is kind of like it's up in the air, because people say that they take a long time to grind out, but I've seen other people say that they're actually a lot faster than expected. But we can see Crest Haven also has plenty of people succeeding. Like Teddy, again, one of the Roach players that we saw here, is actually higher on Crest Haven by a lot than he is on Forest, which again says how much worse Forest is, because Crest Haven, again, there is skill. There's always going to be skill in these decks. Like, there's no denying that there's a lot of nuance and optimizations and recognizing what lines to play when you play all sorts of these decks. But this guy who has like been optimizing, been like grinding out Roach for 2 whole sets, swapping to Crest Haven, which is brand new, significantly outperforming his old mains performance, is kind of crazy, no? And then the real underdog, Portal, which, I mean, if there's going to be a buff happening, it's going to be Portal Craft, right? So there is the argument that maybe they're not playing the most optimized lists, but yeah, Portal. I'm saying so much about Portal, or about Boris and Roach just to have Portal be objectively worse. But I guess this is a video that's more about pointing out how much worse rather Roach is over decks that previously existed. So for this part of the video, I'm going to go over the cards I think are the reason why Roach is significantly suppressed compared to the first two sets. I was going to go through some replays and just talk about it, but my gameplay is really bad right now because, again, because of like the fact that you have to play so much better as Roach. Like, I guess all those rantings to say that if you play like pixel perfect, Roach is still good enough. Like, you can still obviously climb up high as Roach, but the issue that I have is that you have to be so good now. Like, I make one misplay as Roach, I make one bad decision, one bad turn, and the game is completely lost, period. And then when you watch other games, like, obviously, like, the misplays are a lot smaller. Like, for Loot Sword, oh, you don't fuse this turn, or you fuse too much on one turn. Oh, for Rune, you played Burgen instead of Angrea on one turn. Oh, for Dragon, you ramped instead of playing, like, a minion to control the board. Like, there are equivalent mistakes in all these crafts, but the issue is that with Roach, like, since you have, like, you're limited on resources, really, with Roach, and this means that any mistake you make is greatly exaggerated and simplified because of the response cards that now exist. Now, the major offender, in my opinion, for these response cards is going to be the new 3-drop legendary, which is going to be Gildaria. Or not Gildaria, my bad. I saw a G and I was like, Gildaria. But no, it's Gilnelise. So why is Gilnelise so good? Gilnelise is played in almost every deck in the game right now, except for maybe Loot Sword, but we'll talk about Loot Sword when we're there. So Gilnelise, obviously, we can see what she does on the screen. She has a Fanfare where she does the 2-mana spell, +2, -2, and then if you're at 10 max play points, you add Sweetness of Veracity to your hand. This card is completely relevant for the Roach matchup because usually the game is over before the time you cast this. Sometimes it's relevant, but most of the time the spell is not the reason why this card is good. The main reason why this card is good is because of the Drain and the Evo effect. So now why this card does so much against Roach is because this is a card you can play around the mid-game of the game. So like turn 6, turn 7, depending on if you're first or second. You can play this and heal 5 very easily with a Super Evo and selecting Gilnelise as your own target. That 5 HP is actually really impactful because what happens a lot with Roach is that most of the time in sets 1 and 2, the ways you won was actually through a 2-turn kill that your opponent wouldn't be able to stop because they can't heal out of range. With the release of cards like Gilnelise, now literally every craft can heal out of range. Obviously in the past we had stuff like Norman with spell, I can't think of the name right now. You know, the 3-mana card that heals you for 4. Like, there are only particular classes that can heal out of Roach range consistently and also provide blockers. But with Gilnelise, she's only 3 mana, so she's a 3-mana heal 5 that allows you to play other cards that could potentially block the Roach player from continuing their game plan. And that's a huge deal because now, instead of having these 2-turn kill options that they used to have, Roach is now forced to really like fish for the one-shot kill, or they gamble on you having stuff like Gilnelise or other heal cards that exist in the game. So obviously, something like Swordcraft, you're not running Gilnelise as Loot Sword, right? You're running your full loot aggro package. So why is Loot Sword also really obnoxious for Roach to deal with? It's because of this card. Conduit of Usurpation gives you access to Gilded Goblet. And in the past, what you would do against Sword is that you would race them, and that meant like getting scratch damage was really important because that's set up for a slightly earlier kill on like turn 7 or 8, where you wouldn't have to opt for like a 15+ damage combo. You could hit your opponent down to like 12, 13 HP, which would barely be enough for you to scuff into a turn 7 kill, right? But because of Gilded Goblet, because almost every good sword card, or the good loot sword cards, give you a Gilded Goblet. So Devotee of Usurpation gives you Gilded Goblet. Conduit of Usurpation, another great sword card, gives you Gilded Goblet. You have stuff like Lair of Usurpation that can give you Gilded Goblet if you choose to get it. I think Evoing Ostrich doesn't give you Gilded Goblet. So yeah, there are a few of these sword cards that don't give you Gilded Goblet, but the fact of the matter is that they play 5 of these cards, or 8 of these cards total. You play 2 copies of Lair of Usurpation, maybe 3, but you always play 3 copies of Devotee of Usurpation and 3 copies of Conquer Usurpation. So obviously, you're fusing at least one of these goblets to Sincero, but if you recognize the matchup and you recognize like, oh, I actually don't need to fuse, like Sincero at 3 damage at 3 loot cards is still more than enough to kill a lot of forests. So what ends up happening is that if you fuse mostly the quote-unquote bad loot cards, so I think the worst loot card is Gilded Necklace, or you cycle out the Gilded Blade into a card like Returning Slash, what happens is that Sword, instead of having 0 heal like it did in the previous sets, now has anywhere between +2 to like +8 HP for very, very cheap. Gilded Goblet is a 1-mana heal too, and Sword has a lot of turns where they float extra mana. So while you're trying to deal with this, existing tempo from Loot Sword, so like turn 1 they play Lair, turn 2 they play Devotee, turn 3 they play Ostrich, turn 4 they play Congregate, turn 5 they play, Quick Blader into Zirconia. Like while you're still dealing with the old Sword tempo shenanigans, even if you set up that 2-turn kill that you could before, like turn 5, you manage to kill Zirconia, you hit the face with a Roach, and you deal like 6 damage to the enemy. They're at 14, and you might have a small chance of killing them on next turn if you're lucky. Like you've taken some face damage in exchange for that 6 damage setup. They now just click on Gilded Goblet like twice. So they have 4 mana left on turn 6. They click Gilded Goblet twice, and then play like, I don't know, another Zirconia Evo, or they play another Conquer Usurpation, or they play Ostrich and do some other stuff. Like they can heal back out of range of your kill, and then you have to spend your resources to clear their board, which might prevent you from getting your return kill because they're at way higher HP. Going further, so even like Sword is really difficult. Runecraft, which was previously super favored, still running the exact, or very close to the exact same list, but now they also have access to Gilnelise, which ironically is even stronger than stuff like what's it? I can't remember this card. Let me just check this card really quickly. Like Sage-like Teachings obviously healed them a lot, but now they have Sage-like Teachings and they have Gilnelise and they have Norman. So if they miss Sage-like Teachings and they miss Norman, it matters even less because they might have hit Gilnelise instead, which means they have more consistent healing overall. And you can't leave Gilnelise alive because otherwise they heal a full, and also it pressures you, and you still can die to tempo Rune because of stuff like Norman and Kuon. So Gilnelise is also screwing you in this matchup as well. And then so on and so forth. Like Dragoncraft I think is not strong enough. Portal, like Dragon, Egg Portal, blah blah blah. But Abyss, same thing. Like Abyss now has more healing as well. When you look at the new Abyss card, it's not that much healing to be fair, but every tick of healing matters when it comes to getting a 2-turn kill as Roach. If they play Supplicant and you have an empty board, or you have like 1 fairy on board, and they choose to go, and they're trying to rush mode, they'll play Supplicant into heal 2, and they'll Evo into another heal 2, and then that means that this mode Abyss has generated 2 mode selections for their win con while also healing 4 HP, which puts you way further behind compared to where you used to be as a Roach, because that 4 HP is essentially their version of Sagelight, and they've left behind a 6/5 minion for you to clear. Not even mentioning that certain mode Abyss lists do still run Gilnelise, so they also have more healing from that. And then obviously against Abyss, you're on a timeline. You have to either set up a kill through their Gensetsu and Yuzuka, or Yuzuki, Gensetsu Yuzuki, or you try and kill them before Gensetsu Yuzuki, but because of Supplicant and Entwining and because of Gilnelise, the odds you can kill them before Gensetsu and Yuzuki is way lower because they're healing out of it. So yeah, just a random rant video I wanted to post instead of something a bit more educational, because as you guys know from my other videos, I am a Roach one-trick. I made the horrific decision of crafting a bunch of tempo Forest cards last set because I was like, oh, I really like Forest, I really like Arya, and Titania is cute too, so I really want to make these work, and they obviously didn't, and I made Amatazes because I was like, oh, I'm going to meme with Amataz, which obviously didn't work. So I am super poor on vials, mostly by my own mistakes. But I'm being hard punished because the deck that I was relying on, carrying me through multiple sets, and decks that I was essentially like gaslit into believing would always be popular and always being like top 4 easily, is suddenly not even like in contention for being a tier 1 deck. I think Roach, if you play perfectly, like absolutely picture perfect, is probably barely tier 1 now. And that is if you were a perfect Roach player. If you're bad like me, this deck has like rapidly dropped down to like tier 2 easily. And in the past, like you could say that, like in the past, I would argue that being a picture perfect Roach player made you tier 0 in performance. But now if you're that great, you're not getting the rewards for it. So I cannot in good faith recommend Carbuncle Roach learning to anybody in this set, because I think you'll literally only learn bad habits, because you'll be really harsh on yourself for thinking there was a different way I could have done, there's something I could have done, I could have gotten better. But odds are it's not actually true anymore because there's too much healing in the set. So yeah, that'll be the video. Thank you guys for watching. I will probably be playing Take 2 until I farm enough stuff, assuming I'm good enough to Take 2, until I farm enough stuff to actually play a different deck. So yeah, if there's a gameplay video, expect it to either be Super Cope on Roach, or hopefully I have something else crafted by then. Bye bye.